Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Sorry for the late start. We had a little technological issues, but we're through it now. Before I get started on this, I want to just do a little survey. Who here composts at home? Awesome. Who here composts in community or at some larger scale other than backyard? Awesome. Who here loves to turn compost with a fork? Who loves to turn it with a tractor? Who wishes they could turn it with a tractor? Yeah, me too. Although 9 and 10-year-olds are pretty good at it too. Who here works or is a part of a school? Great. Who here is a part of an agency throughout the state of Vermont or New Hampshire? Great. Think that's all I have. But is there anyone else that's like, I didn't call you out and you're doing something really cool that I should know about? Okay. There's room for everybody in this conversation. So yeah, I'm Kat Buxton, Upper Valley Super Compost Project. Our mission is to grow social and soil resilience by bringing tailored compost infrastructure to public schools and supporting the development of cooperative, fully integrated school composting systems. This is Sharon Elementary School Compost Palace. We like to call it a palace because it is. It's just a pavilion, but it's not just a pavilion. It's a pavilion palace where lots of food waste gets managed and turned into magical soil amendments with the help of microbes. We work with schools to find diversion and disposal options that work for them, avoid practices that pollute or negatively impact, increase real-world problem-solving opportunities for students. We love to be able to solve problems together. I think that's a big part of what CAV likes to do as well. And I really loved our keynote this morning. That was just fantastic, right? Integrating compost education and culture building in the classroom initiatives. I'm a total soil geek, and I really love to turn kids on to soil health and how integral that is to all the things that we do and how compost can help get us there, and actually just eating food is a part of that. So we're all a part of building soil, even if we don't know that. Enhancing the biological health of soil in school and community landscapes. And as a program, we cultivate communities that collaborate to address concerns, develop a replicable framework for other regions to follow. So that's good. These are 3 of our systems, just 3 sort of examples. So the Compost Palace is what schools get if they have room for it, but not every school has room for it. We also do modified builds. So some of the schools that we're working with have been composting for years, maybe not super well, and they didn't quite have the right infrastructure. So then we do what we call a modified build to just improve the existing system that they already have. And that's also true for tumblers. So that's Newberry Elementary on the right. When we started working with them, they had 1 Jora tumbler. Do you guys know Jora tumblers here? They're pretty cool. I'm not a huge fan of tumblers. They're actually one of my least favorite ways to compost. Sorry. They freeze, they're messy, flies love them, but you can get good at them. And this school has been doing a really good job. So when we started working with them, they had 1 Jora. It wasn't enough to manage all of their food waste, so we bought them 2 more and then built over to the left side. There's some wooden bins, so when the compost comes out of the Jora, it still needs work before it can go in the garden. So
what school is that, Kat?
That's Newberry Elementary. And that school, that little strip of land that you see there is all the space they have. That's their main parking lot and entrance, the corner of pavement there, and then it's the town tennis court on the right. So the school is on the town common. So although there's a big green, it's the town common, and that community's not quite ready for that cultural shift of having a composting system there. That's a palace, but maybe we'll get there. So right now they're using the Joras. The one in the middle is Samuel Morey Elementary School, which is in Fairleigh, and they had been using these stone bays. Those were already in place, just like the 6x4 stone blocks. So they had those in place, but they weren't covered. They didn't really have the right recipe, so they weren't reaching pathogen kill temperatures. We gave them a roof and a door so apples and oranges wouldn't roll out anymore, and that they could then manage the amount of moisture, which is increasingly important as our weather shifts and we get either way too much or way too little, so that we can manage the moisture best to make sure those microbes are thriving. And this is our compost palace. So we have 5 of these at schools right now. And these were really built with the idea of being able to compost year-round in a way that's comfortable, with a roof over top, without creating more plowing and other things for maintenance teams to manage, mowing around stuff. So really just trying to make sure that we're making it as easy as possible for schools to be able to do this. And I do want to say, yeah, if you have any questions throughout, like, raise your hand. Yeah.
What are the population of these schools, roughly?
Roughly. Most of our schools are somewhere between 80 and 150 kids. We have one school that's got 300. So they're all pretty small. Sharon Elementary is about 120. Samuel Morey is about 85 or 90, I think. And Newberry is a little less than that. So they're all pretty small.
That's like really big in my world. We have a max of 24 students at our school, and it's usually about 16. We do compost, but it's not a lot.
Also, what's interesting is that the number of kids in the school doesn't always correlate to the amount of food scrap that they're composting.
Yeah, actually one of our smallest schools is one of the largest generators of waste, but it's because they don't have a school cafeteria. It's prepared off campus. It's brought to them, right? So that there's a lot that goes into why there's so much food waste. It's a goal of our program to first, we follow the hierarchy. So it's really about source reduction, reducing waste. And it's kind of interesting. We're learning that really composting helps to create the awareness of how much waste there is. And then reduction tends to come gradually later. Yeah.
And is this only within elementary schools, or have you shifted it out towards middle schools or high schools?
Middle schools are awesome because those kids are stronger and they can turn compost better. We have one school that is pre-K through 8, and a bunch of our schools go up to 6th grade. So we're starting with middle school kids. We're starting to work with a couple of high schools. So it's not exclusive, but it does turn out that in our education system and with what's available in the curriculum and the school day, elementary schools are sort of the best shoe-in. They're also the ones with school gardens so that you can have the food loop. But no, we really want to increase it to middle and high schools. And we've been working with others to try and get there. But the older kids are busy. They're doing a lot of really cool stuff. So we also want to make sure that it's a sustainable program, that there will be participation.
Best case scenario, those elementary school students go on to the middle and high schools and demand that their schools start similar programs. We also have constellation sites where a number of different institutions are contributing food scraps, and they're sort of using the site as a community, which Kat will talk to in a bit.
Yeah, we'll go over that, but that Sharon site does have multiple people. So make sure our schools generate an average of 12,000 pounds per year. So it's anywhere from 8 to 25,000 pounds with our schools, based on our best calculations, and we can talk about how we get those numbers. So we are always trying to figure out, how do we talk about the impact? Yeah.
Yeah, she partially answered that. I guess you are consolidating from other sources at some of these schools.
We have one school where we're doing that right now. I'd love to get to a point where we can do more of that, but we need more people to understand how to use a system. Because the more people you have contributing to a system, the more possible problems that could arise. So certainly a goal of ours is to up the level of skill in our community for understanding how to compost, what to do and what not to do, and how to correct it when things go wrong, because they will. But so until we get there, we're really trying to make sure that we're not causing any additional issues. Any more questions at this point? Okay, yeah, keep them coming. Totally happy to take your questions. That's what it's all about. So when schools sign up for our program, what they get is site and program assessments. So we go in, we build relationships. We're making sure that they're actually lined up to be able to do this, that the food service and the maintenance are on board, administration is on board. We've got teachers, ideally more than one, and we've got a team of 3 to 5 people within the school that are committed to moving the system along. Before we started the project, we identified a lot of barriers that why schools don't compost, and school turnover is one of those. So really trying to make sure that we're not just working with one champion. We love those champions, but we want to not burn them out and make sure that they feel supported. So a school they get site and program assessments, construction support, all of the essential supplies, technical service for 2 years after the system goes into place, classroom support for 2 years after the system goes into place. And we could be working with schools for a year or more before we even get to this point. So there are some schools I've been working with for 3 to 5 years already. It can take a while to build the support. I've had one example I can give you is this was actually a middle high school I was working with. We had like a team of 4 people. They were so excited. We were about to build. We had gone through a permitting process, and then 3 of those 4 teachers got better jobs elsewhere. So we went back to the drawing board. We weren't going to go ahead and build. We said, no, we don't have the support. We don't want this to become another like bones in the schoolyard project that no one knows what this building is for. So that's really important. So our staff work with schools for at least a year to prepare for composting, and for 2 years after the system is installed. Next. Relationships are key. Relationships are key, and part of the reason, I think honestly, why this is being so successful is I've been working with schools in the Upper Valley region for 15 years. I've developed relationships with a lot of these schools already, so getting into the school was a pretty easy lift for me. Sometimes just like knowing how to connect with a school can be a real barrier. Actually, just physically knowing like which door is the entry to the school can be a real barrier. Never mind who to talk to in the school. And it's not always the same person. Sometimes it's a teacher or a school nurse or a maintenance person or the school principal. It could be different. Sometimes it's a parent that really wants to make things happen. And in all of those cases, those are really great places to start, but none of those alone are enough. Diverse leadership is really required, and we make sure it's a requirement that the facilities and the food service, the nutrition services teams are supportive, if not very involved in the process. We consult with them right away because they're the folks that they run so much at a school that goes unseen, and especially when it comes to food. We want everyone who's involved with the food to be a part of creating the solution and solving problems together, so that we can make sure that we're meeting their fears and any other barriers that they've identified before we even get started. That's really critical. So this is our cute language for, no, that's okay, I was ready. The cute language on top, we're trying to bring in some biological language there. We have a bunch of schools in like the sporing phase right now, right? So they're kind of learning, they are interested, we're building those relationships, we're figuring out what are the problems we need to solve, how are we gonna solve them together, what's it gonna look like at this school. Once we get through there, we begin inoculating. So now we're like, okay, we've identified our problems, how are we gonna address those? We've got some plans. Then we get into germinating, where in the inoculation phase, they're like, okay, we got a plan, we're in, let's do this. We've made a commitment to each other. We solidify that commitment in the germinating phase. We've got contracts, and all of these things are being developed as we roll with the program. And I just got to give Allie a shout out here. Allie is, I'm the one that gets up and talks, but I couldn't possibly do this without the back end support of Allie and all the things that she's created, including these contracts and really helping to solidify the language and this sort of phase, like knowing that we have phases so that we can replicate it the same way. I'm kind of famous for just reinventing it every time. And that can be fun, but it's not really great for replication. So once we get through the germinating phase, we're now committed. We've formally onboarded. Now we're myceliating. So now we're building. We're operationalizing the supply site. We're getting our technical visits. We're doing classroom support. And we're reaching out to the community to really build that sort of mycelium connection, the social mycelium connection into our communities to support the system. And then the fruiting. We now have 7 schools that are officially fruiting. I'll talk about the 8th school a little later. And what we mean by fruiting is they're making compost. They're cycling it back into their school gardens. This is going to be the first spring where we've got some schools that have finished compost to put back into their school garden. Many of them won't have finished compost until the fall, although we've got lots of piles on the ground that are curing. All right. Cohort 1 schools. So in 2023, our first system was built with a Vermont Agency of Agriculture Vision Grant. And that was at Sharon Elementary School. That's my hometown school. I've been volunteering with them for many years. They had a compost system that wasn't big enough. We still managed to get pathogen kill temperatures, but it couldn't handle all the waste that the food had. The bins weren't big enough. It was poorly built. It was in a bad site. So they now have a compost palace. Newberry, Samuel Morey, Westshire, Waits River Valley, Alberts Bridge Elementary, and Marion Cross Elementary. These are all the schools that are a part of Cohort 1. So that means that they were built within 2023 and 2024. I often say 8 schools because for the last 17 years I've been the compost and garden manager at Thetford Elementary School. So that's really where this whole idea started. They compost 8,000 pounds a year. And we know that because the students been collecting data for many years, measure their food waste volume and weights every day. They're not officially enrolled in the project yet, but I'm leaving that position at the end of June, and then they'll be enrolled in the Super Compost Project. So they didn't need the support of the Super Compost Project because they had me 1 day a week, year round. Yeah.
So for this cohort, I guess, how do you as an organization, was this where did you set your goal of 7 or 8 schools? Was that a lot for you to bite off? Could you do 14? Do you have the capability to fluctuate?
Those are really good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that why are we onboarding cohorts is a really good question too.
Yeah, it's not something we thought of before. Now that we've got these, we're like, oh, that's a cohort. Let's call that a cohort. They're all moving at about the same pace. They're at about the same place. It's so they can work together. And going forward, we're really going to try and build that sort of peer-to-peer support. We'll talk more about that as it goes on. But one of our ideas in this whole project was to keep it regional. That's why it's called the Upper Valley Super Compost Project. We have no intention of going outside of our region, but we do want to share everything that we're building so that other people can do this. Because schools doing this in isolation hasn't worked. Not that it can't work, but when schools in community are doing this, they now have an opportunity for field trips to each other's systems, for teachers to share what's working and what's not working, to share feedstock suppliers, volunteers, all sorts of things. So, and to actually work together to shift the culture of our community. And in the Upper Valley, as it is throughout the state, kids are shifting schools. We've got choice schools, at least for now. We don't know how things are going to go in the future, but there's a lot of reason to build the collaborative piece in. So the cohort model is really lending toward that. It's not something we thought of at first. And going forward, I think 7's too much at once. We're managing it, and it's going to be fine. And we're working toward cohort 2. I'd like to keep that around 5 schools, but some of it is also organic. Who's ready? At what time? And when do we have the funding? So that's another piece of it, was the funding. We stopped at 7 because we ran out of construction funds. We got a CFWR, which is the Community Food Waste Reduction grant from it was a USDA, NEFA collaborative federal grant, and that paid for the funding of the construction at 6 of our schools.
So the question about could we do 14, we commit to the intensive phase with all of our schools once they're ready, which, as Kat mentioned, can take a while. But once we onboard them, we commit to 2 years of classroom and technical support and meeting their construction needs. And the construction piece of that has been the most expensive. So what we've been trying to do is make sure that we have the funds in place to fully fund an entire cohort before we actually launch that cohort.
So that's where we're at now, is raising money for the second cohort of schools for the construction piece.
What kind of money are you talking about for the grant to develop that first cohort?
Pre-tariff? Yeah, so the Super Compost Palace costs about $30,000. We hire a local builder from Randolph, so he comes with his team. We buy locally milled hemlock, so we're really trying to keep it as local as possible. They had metal roofs. We hope to keep that going, but that might have to change going forward because that's one of the things that the cost is going to increase. But we also want to be super practical. I don't want to move away from metal because I want these systems to also be able to catch water for their gardens, and there's some reason to not want to catch water off of like tarred roofs. So that's a bridge we'll cross when we come to it. But so pre-tariffs, it was about $30,000 for a full compost palace. And that includes everything from scraping the ground and putting in a ground surface to building the pavilion, roofing it, and building the compost system underneath it. In addition to that, we budget about $3,000 for supplies. So that's wheelbarrows, forks, thermometers, trash grabbers, gloves, buckets, barrels, all the physical supplies that a school would need to be able to, the tools that they need to make it happen. So those are our estimated costs. Yeah.
Do all these schools have gardens that they use the compost?
They do.
Or did they also create that at the same time?
They all already had gardens. And that makes me also want to just mention that these are all in Vermont. We are developing some relationships with schools in New Hampshire, and we hope to go over there too. And it might be a very different game because Vermont has a universal recycling law. These schools have already been separating their food scraps. Whether they're doing it well or not is a different story, and we help to improve that. And while some New Hampshire schools are doing that because it's the right thing, they're not required by law. So it might be a different starting place for those schools. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And are they composting meat and dairy too?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we get really high, sometimes scary high temperatures in our compost system. Yeah.
What does your classroom support look like for like those 2 years, well, even prior to the 2 years after?
It's a really good question, and it totally depends on the school and the teacher and what the interest is.
Okay.
If it were up to me, it would be all about microbes and some math. So math and science are the obvious ones, but a creative teacher who also understands composting can connect it to everything. So that's one of the things we're working on now is how do we help teachers understand composting so that they can do what they do best. So my goal is to support the teachers. So if they say, this is what I want to teach, then I'll figure out a way to support them in doing that.
Right, so it's not you going in and necessarily teaching about it.
It's a lot of that.
Okay.
But it's also connecting with VINS, which is the Vermont Institute for Natural Science. Next week, we have 2 of our schools presenting. One is at the VINS Science Symposium about their compost project, and the other is about the ECAP program, which is the Equitable Climate Action Project, also happening at VINS as a symposium. So really connecting them with community resources, and then also working with those organizations to help make sure that they have what they need to be able to support students in composting. So I don't want it all to revolve around like Kat comes to your classroom and talks about microbes. But I do a lot of that.
Okay.
Can I follow on that?
Yes.
Just to say that it's true she can and does, and that's like a critical part of the work that's happening. But the goals of the classroom component of the program are a little more meta than that. They have more to do with, are schools able to use the systems as outdoor classrooms? Are they integrating them with what's happening in the classroom? Are teachers getting enough support to be able to use the system, data from the system in classroom exercises, things like that? So a little like one step pulled back from the in-classroom activities. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I also want to just give a big shout out to all of the environmental educators, farm to school people that aren't classroom teachers, but that are in schools supporting outdoor education already. Those schools do better than others because they've got that culture in their school and they've got that person to connect the dots. So we need more people like that. Yeah.
How are you getting the local wildlife to cooperate with the storage of material for your different houses? So the bears and the raccoons and everything.
I was just thinking we were going to talk about communities of practice in a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah. If we don't answer that, please ask again. But I think we're gonna cover that. Okay. Next. And you probably already read it while I was yammering at you, but those 7 schools together right now, by our calculations, are diverting 100,000 pounds a year into their school gardens and sometimes community gardens. Make sure that we talk about snake worms too. If I don't mention that, somebody ask that question, okay? This is Nima, the nematode, by the way. She is our superhero mascot that we're just launching into the world, and she was designed by, I just asked our marketing team, King Arthur Flour Baking Company, offered their marketing team as a part of just supporting our project. I said, I'd really love a microbe superhero, and they made Nima. So I was like, oh my God, she's so cute, we love her. So that's Nima. So this is one of our systems, a compost palace. This school, so we do have some of the student population stuff here. This is serving Corinth and Topsom, pre-K through 8, 325 people in the school, 270 kids. And right now we think they produce about 16,000 pounds of food scraps a year, which is quite a lot. This is also a school where we have the students are turning their own compost, which is really cool. So they've got 7th and 8th graders that's their role. They come out and they turn the compost. We've got 2 of our 7 schools that have students, like they report back to me, we just turned the compost again. It's like a dream come true. Other schools, people like Abby and others come with me, or master composter volunteers, sometimes teachers or parents come and help to turn compost. So that's how that gets done. This is, yeah, good. Newberry Elementary School, that's the one I told you about with the Joras. It's a little bit better picture. You can see their 3 bins. One of those they use for feedstocks, and the other 2 are where the post-Jora contents go. So when it comes out of the Jora, there's very little, if any, recognizable food scraps. You would still see peach pits, avocado pits, and chicken bones. Eggshells, maybe a few other things. And then they get turned into the wooden bins where they're layered if they need to be with other feedstocks. And then from there, they'll get turned out into gardens. Depending on how finished they are, they might have to go into a pile on the ground to cure with the macroorganisms and the local worms and beetles.
the porta potty isn't part of the process.
It is not, but that is a multi-use space, and that is all they have. So we did our best. We put in a landscaping fabric and wood chips just to help the maintenance team not have to weed whack around the whole thing. And at that particular school, it is the facilities maintenance director who's doing the composting. He was already doing it before we approached him. He's got a farm at home. He had 1 Jora. He was taking food waste and putting it in there. And then the rest of it was coming home to his chickens and pigs or manure pile. So we've actually helped him. And they've just hired a farm-to-school coordinator who's really going to be focused on composting to really try and integrate that programming more with the kids in the school garden. So that's a unique situation. That is our only school where it's the maintenance guy that's like, I'm doing this. Yeah.
We have cold composting. We don't have enough scraps, I don't think, to do a hot compost, but some staff are saying you can compost meats, and I'm saying you need a hot compost for that.
Yeah.
Okay. And the stickers on the fruits, oh, they're compostable now. And I keep saying, no,
they're not.
Oh, they make them now. They assure you, Lord.
They're not. Well, that's a great opportunity for a real life experiment. Let's try composting. And then
They still get in there, and we still find
Yeah.
them. We toss them into the garden, and yeah, there's stickers.
Right, and
sometimes a random.
I like to tell the story to kids too that you can still scan the barcode. Like when it comes out of a compost system, it's actually cleaner sometimes than it went in because the microbes cleaned the plastic sticker off. And you can still scan that barcode after it could go through a chicken. And also because they can't digest it either. So it is plastic. It's crazy. I swear when I was a kid that was paper, but it's not. And I've heard that there's some efforts to try and make those more of a biodegradable thing. That would be really great. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, I work at a commercial composting facility and they come out just the same as they went in. So, Kat deals with hot compost, I deal with really hot compost. Not compostable.
It's not happening.
No.
Even the paper ones can have stuff in their adhesives that you can run in your compost. So like the banana stickers still need to be removed.
Yeah.
No, they have the technology to make them compostable. It's just not marketed and it's not widely used.
It also raises questions about, though, there will be residual materials on those supposedly compostable stickers. It's probably just
have to be
not a great idea.
Talk to your legislators.
Have to be certified.
It would be great. And that's part of our culture shift, right? Yeah.
We're working on it with ECO's working on it now to try to get certified with BPI. But as a few of them mentioned, it's the adhesive that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's finding, it's finding an adhesive that can get certified is the biggest hang-up. We have the PLA film. It's just the adhesive.
So it is the
It's 100% the adhesive. Yeah, because we started doing a filming technology over the past year that's BPI certified. We just rolled it out to a school system actually in Ohio for some fruit trays that they're doing. So it's a fiber-based with a certified PLA film across the top. But the stickers are a hang-up because of the adhesive. It's a real struggle.
It's really interesting. Well,
we're going for it.
I hope that we can get there. That would be really great, or some other system to not create those microplastics, because that's essentially
just
what
bans them in the whole country, and it goes into effect next year, I think it is.
Who did?
So what are
New Zealand?
Oh, New Zealand.
How are they tracking and scanning their food for pricing and,
No, the regulators will be checking.
But it's like you go to the checkout stand and they do your PLU, and that's how they know the charts.
A lot of them, you do that before you check out. You find it on a screen, you weigh it, you put, a sticker on the bag or something, but not on the actual produce.
Good luck with that. We're Americans. It's like that.
So I'm talking way too much. I'm not getting through my slides. So I'm gonna just try and get through these so that we can really get into conversation. What we really want to be able to talk a lot about today is communities of practice, right? And how can we do this together? How do we increase the collaboration? So schools, we believe schools are central to community hubs. They provide an opportunity for communities to come together. My hometown of Sharon, our school is our emergency facility. It is the place where community gathers for all sorts of events. It's where sports teams, all the sports events happen. It's where the fire department has their annual barbecue. It's the old home days location. And schools are so central, and every school community is different, but it's really a place to connect our communities. They provide an opportunity to enhance community composting initiatives, fortifying community resilience and skills, increasing the community of practice, supporting our schools. Students, school, and program staff work together with volunteers from the host town to build a lasting community of practice to maintain the system into the future. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that and how we hope to do that. There's a lot of room for improvement, and we really hope to get there. So our model is really these sort of concentric circles of communities of practice. starting with that yellow circle in the center, is really like the school itself, making sure that there's a strong community of practice in that school. As I mentioned before, it's not just one champion, and it's across the staff culture in the school, maintenance and nutrition services, administration and teachers, paras, community volunteers. We start to get into the second circle now with parents, the PTO, the school board, community volunteers, town government, maybe it's the local library, food pantries, local farms and foresters, school and community gardens, then getting out into what's happening regionally in our state. So the master gardeners and composters, the solid waste management districts, farm to school networks, other schools that are doing this, supervisory unions, other education groups or institutions like VINS or the Montshire Museum, Regeneration Corps, and our regional conservation districts have been really critical in being support for us, and we're finding that we're able to swap skills because farms, conservation districts often work with farms who also need to compost. So we're going to talk more about also like workforce development and how do we up the game on technical service providers across the board. And then our outermost circle is like all of our regional schools together, our advisory team, which has been amazing. If you ever do a project like this, make sure you have a steering committee or advisory team of people that are smarter than you and resourced in different ways that come to the table with different perspectives. I really rely on the advisory team to sort of check my reality and push back against ideas I might have to make sure that we're thinking about everything. Next one. Here's a case study at Sharon Elementary School. So I mentioned this before, that this is our only school where we have more than one entity contributing to the system. And this is actually the feature of tomorrow's field trip, this site. So if you were thinking about coming for a field trip, I hope you come to Sharon. It's going to be really fun. So they collect from the elementary school, the middle school, and the food pantry. So those three circles to the right are showing the location of those buildings, really close by. And then the little square is where our compost palace is, right up against the fence along the highway. It's a pre-K through 6, 204 total people. I think it's important to not just look at kids, because adults, you know, we waste. And we're a big part of the school system. And in my experience, it's actually a little bit harder to get the adults to follow the rules around food scrap sorting than it is the kids. The kids get it. And they're just used to being told what to do. I mean, kind of unfortunately. But estimated at 15,000 pounds of food scraps per year through all three of those. And one of our goals here is to get the kids from the middle school to start turning compost at the elementary school. I think we're getting closer to that. Some of those middle school kids were in the elementary school when they were composting already, so they already are familiar with the process. But it takes time, long, like sometimes years, to really let that set in. I think in 10 years, we're going to be in a really different place. Yeah.
Do you have PE teachers involved? Are they talking about like ergonomics of turning and like how to move your body?
We're starting that. I mean, I'm like planting that seed every time I can. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. And I was that kid that I really hated gym. I was not a competitor. I was overweight. I just didn't like it. But if I had a special job to do where I could use my body, I would have excelled. And I meet kids like that all the time. And gym teachers get it. So we're working on that PE health, life skills. I think part of what we're missing is like if a gym teacher doesn't know how it works, then it's hard for them to integrate their class into it. Also, gym teachers don't often have a second person with them. So they've got 20 kids. And trying to get 20 kids into a compost activity, you know, you really need 2 or 3. So I think we'll get there. And I'm meeting them already, but I'm waiting for the gym teachers to tell me what is the best way to do this, because they know way better than I do. Feedstock ingredients for this community also, we get wood shavings from 2 carpenters that are within a mile of the school, hay and manure from 3 different horse farms that are all within 3 to 5 miles of the school, some really close. And really working to try and get more volunteers to help get the feedstocks to the schools. Right now, I run around with my truck collecting them. Yeah, yeah. We have a couple of parents and a couple of people that are willing to drop off things occasionally, but it's a lot of me driving around.
Picking stuff up and
Because it's
storing
too
it.
far of a distance to do like a bike thing or anything for the kids to.
Yeah, it's time considerations. I love the idea though, and that would be another way to get gym class involved, right? Let's all take a bike, trailer and each carry a bale of hay back on our trailer. That would be awesome. Peer-to-peer learning is, this is a phrase, it means a lot of different things. It could mean in classrooms. This is something that's happening right now at Sharon Elementary School. We have a 5th grade class that's doing everything. And they've been like, how do we get more people interested in this? Well, the kids came up with the idea that, we need to create presentations about composting and go around and present to every classroom in the school. So that's what the 5th graders are doing. They've separated into groups of 3 to 5 kids, and they've tackled different grade appropriate presentations. So they're going around and presenting to the students and the teachers. And they're offering tours of the composting system and bringing kids out and showing them how to make a compost deposit. That kind of peer-to-peer learning among students is really important. And we're seeing more and more of that. And it's thrilling to see that kind of stuff happen. But also among schools. So we've got some schools that say they want to be a part of a super compost project. They're not sure what it looks like. They bring a busload of kids to a super compost palace, and then we have kids present to them. So now we have kids from one school presenting to kids from another school. And we've been doing this for quite a while. Then we also have this idea of, I was just at a farm to school gathering yesterday at Sharon Elementary School. It was the Upper Valley Farm to School, part of Vital Communities. And we had 60 people there from schools all around the Upper Valley. And for the first time, I had teachers from different schools that are composting sitting together, sharing ideas. That kind of peer-to-peer learning, which the Farm to School Network has been so good at cultivating for so many years, but really focusing that on composting is something else. And then also peer-to-peer parents and school groups and the whole community learning together. So peer-to-peer learning, I think, is going to be a big part of our project going forward, more than it has been, and I think we're already starting to see more results. One of the most exciting things for me is to walk into a school and see a project about composting that I had nothing to do with. That's the best. And, our real heroes, right? The soil food web and all these microbes that are allowing us all to be here, enabling us all to be here. And our job is to really help create, create the conditions for thriving ecosystems, and these microbe superheroes are really at the root of that. So I like to use that as an analogy, but it's also just super true. Like, I think I'm just driven, the microbes are telling me what to do. They just climb, they're in there just telling me what to do. So our communities, they extend beyond the school grounds and connect students to the social and ecological ecosystem around them. And we really try to model this mycelium concept of reciprocal relationships and mutually beneficial relationships among people in community. And how can we model this concept? And nature's our greatest teacher. Next. Science learning, I get pretty excited about this. We have a partnership with the New Hampshire Academy of Science, which is located at Crossroads Academy, and they have a microscope loan library of really high-powered compound microscopes that you can see microbes with. They loan them out for free. They're amazing. What an incredible resource. So I've been borrowing microscopes and bringing them to schools and running microscopy units, where we learn about how to take a representative sample. We go out to the compost piles and we get representative samples of different ages of compost. Separately, take a representative sample of each and then bring them back into the classroom and look for microbes. And then we can compare who are we finding in which different age of compost. And it's really elementary, literally, in elementary schools. And there's a lot of room for this. And what I'm finding is that the teachers are learning so much in this process too. So this is a pseudoscorpion that a 5th grader found. Super awesome. This thing, if it could, you can find a sample of one of these, like the leg of a fly. Like it's a pin. You could see it with your naked eye, but you wouldn't be able to see any detail. It would look like just a pen dot on a piece of paper. But when you look at it at 400 times the magnification, that's what it looks like under a microscope. On the right-hand side, that's what a nematode looks like. So they don't actually look like that, but that's cuter than that. And these are kids at Thetford Elementary School. So again, not part of our cohorts yet, but a school I've been working with for a long time. I've known these kids since they were babies. Next one. One of the ways that we hope to increase our community of practice is to make it clear what's happening in this compost palace. Right now, you can walk up and maybe not, unless you're a composter yourself, you might not know what's happening there. So really coming up with the materials. This is an example of some of the posters we're coming up with that will be set up as self-guided tour stations. And trying to find the balance of like, how do we let the community know what's happening here while also making it clear that you can't deposit your food scraps here. And not locking it, right? And then invoking curiosity and getting more people involved by invoking that curiosity and making it clear how to get in touch with us. And not just for people in the community, but sometimes it's all the rest of the people at the school. So we've got one class that's like taking the compost through, but all the other classes in the school are like not really sure what happens out there. This gives an opportunity for more self-guided education and other classes to come and learn from the system. So we hope by increasing the visibility and making it clear what's happening there, that will invite more curiosity and participation from the community. And one of my latest things is I teach backyard composting classes all the time. I love doing it. I love helping people to increase their confidence in managing food waste and yard waste in their backyards. So now we're calling those compost like your kids do. And we're hosting these in communities where super compost systems happen and partnering them. So first I teach a backyard composting class, and then we take a tour of a super compost system so that we can see it increased in scale. And I think one of the best ways to learn how to compost is to come volunteer at a system like this that's making compost much faster than your backyard, so that you can dig in and turn compost and see what it actually looks like, experience the heat, really demystify the whole process for yourself, and then you increase your own confidence in your own composting game. So that's one of the goals here, is to increase the awareness and the know-how about composting for parents, for people in our community, and for teachers. I've found that at Thetford Elementary School, just a little anecdotal story, I mentioned I've been there for 17 years. We've been composting there for 11 years. And just this year, I had the first, I didn't think of it before, to invite all of the staff to a compost tour. And it became clear to me then that there were teachers that I'd been working with for 10 years that had no idea what was happening in those bins. And they actually spent a good portion of the tour asking questions about how to improve their home compost. And I was like, right, they need classes too. So now we're hosting these classes for teachers, for community members, for parents, to increase their game so that they then can know how to refer back to a composting system as an experiential, hands-on, outdoor education project. Yeah.
Are those during the school day, or is it after school?
Right after school.
I really try to make those designed for teachers. Yes. So after school, and sorting it out with them a time before I even tell the community about it. And again, every community is different, but I try to make them after school on a weekday to get the best participation. And libraries are really great to partner with. And sometimes the library is often like right next to the school. So that can be really helpful.
Are the adults included in your grant funding for being able to participate?
You mean counted as volunteers?
Yeah, I'm talking about like when you're bringing in adults to learn, is that also included in what you're getting funded for with the students, with the kids? Or you just do it as a volunteer, as an add-on?
A little of both. A little of both. So sometimes we're able to fold that in, depending on what the funding source is and how it's coming, we can fold that into building out communities of practice, which is included in our funding. So every funder is different and what they'll fund and what they want to hear about. But we, a big part of what we're trying to do is not be extractive of ourselves or of community. So yes, I do volunteer, but I also need to make sure that I get paid for my time enough to make a living. And then in the workforce development conversation that I hope to have with you, and there's a session later today about that, it is important to value people's time and value this as a really critical, necessary skill for our future, how to cycle our waste and just even get rid of this idea of waste. We're the only species, right, that has a waste stream. Okay. UVM master composters have been a huge help to us. And we just recently got all of our sites are now listed as UVM master composter project sites. So that means that master composter interns from the state of Vermont can come to any one of our sites to turn compost and get their service project hours. So that's been a really awesome partnership with the UVM master composter program. And here we are, providing for a permanent TSP pool. This is something we want to be able to do more of. We've been talking with Natasha for a while about this. We do a lot of technical service provider work together with farms. I'm a TSP for her on-farm food scraps composting project, as is Allie. So we recognize in that project that the farmers that we work with, and that project was designed around this idea that farmers need more than one visit to learn how to compost. You really need to be able to check in over the course of a couple of years through the whole course of decomposition and composting, right down to how am I going to use this compost on my property, on my farm, in my land, in my school grounds. So really being able to walk through the whole process and not just this one-off sort of thing. So how do we do that together? We don't have the answers, but we have lots of ideas. So I hope you can join that session later today. Our advisory team, just want to give a big shout out. We have, Sarah's here from DEC, but we have Shannon, who was doing the Zoom session this morning for CAV. She's on our advisory board as well. We've just got this amazing group of people representing all sorts of parts of the community, everything from food waste rescuers to solid waste management professionals, to CAV, to ex-teachers and principals. KidsGardening.org is an incredible organization. If you don't know about them, they're based in Vermont. They do a lot of really great education, and then making sure our conservation districts are a part of that too. This isn't a whole list of who we'd love to have, but this is a manageable advisory team. We've got 13 members on our advisory team, so really helpful. And one of the amazing things, just one of the amazing things that Allie has done for us is she created an app that we do our own monitoring. So we hire technical service providers. We have one hired now. We're about to hire our second. We try to partner 4 schools with one TSP. Again, thinking about that, how do these schools connect to each other? What can they learn from each other? Rather than have one school with one TSP, we've got 4 schools and one TSP, just sort of cultivating that. And they use this app. I'm one of the TSPs for now too. I kind of wear all the hats until they get filled. Where we go to these systems and we collect our own data at least once a month, where we're monitoring the moisture and the temperature and everything to like, are the tools dirty? How much trash is there? Is the place clean? What needs to be, what are we noticing? How can this be improved? Schools also collect their own data, and this gives us an opportunity to compare so that we can get more accurate about our data. And then it's also enabling us to be able to give a report back to schools at the end of the year. This is what we noticed. This is what you've done. Congratulations, that sort of thing. So we're happy to share this. We have it on, it's on my phone, it's on Allie's. So if you have questions about that, let us know. And yeah, I think that was it.
What's the name of the app?
It's just UVSCP. I don't think you couldn't find it anywhere at this point. Like, it's just
It's just for us.
Yeah, it's not publicly available, but it's the tool that we use to collect data on the impact of our program that we're required to report, but also a tool that we put in the hands of our technical service providers and teachers. So there was a question about contamination earlier in the stickers, and one of the reports is actually a contamination report that can be turned into an exercise you do with kids. We're actually taking a sample and looking at how much of that sample is contaminated and thinking about how that contamination happened and what can be done to change it. So I'm happy, we have a live demo of it, so I'm happy to show you some of those reports later.
Yeah, and I just want to say that, as Allie's developing these apps to help us collect information, some of which was driven by the objectives we designed for ourselves in a federal grant. And when it comes to reporting time, we're like, oh, okay, now we got to report on that. But Allie's all over it, so she's created the ways to be able to do that. And we're learning so much from our own questions of like our own objectives, and realizing how we can expand upon that into the future and really provide that feedback to schools and to our TSPs and to all of you, what's working, what's not. And that's all working toward a toolkit as well. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So tomorrow, that's our Compost Palace at Sharon Elementary School. So if you come, look for the red roof to the right along the highway and join us. It is in the middle of the school day, so you have to follow all those rules and park in the right spot. Voris has it all listed out for what you need to do, but I hope you can come. There's still time to register for that. And we will have, for the first half an hour, so don't be late, first half an hour we're going to have students out. They're going to make a compost deposit for us. I think we'll have, I'm not sure. It depends how they are tomorrow. The teacher will come out with as many kids as are ready for that. Every day is different at a school, and you've got to be ready to just, all the teachers know this. So I hope you can join us for that. We have a lot of supporters, and I also I want to shout out to certainly the people that give us money. We couldn't do it without that, but it's so much more than money. It's mind support, it's body support, it's just collaboration in general. It's the logo from King Arthur. Natasha and Cav have been amazing. Our conservation districts, my business donates a lot of my time. Allie's business is Fruit to Root. The New Hampshire Academy of Science, we get microscopes from. The Master Composter Program, our fiscal sponsor, has been incredible. All of our schools are great. We couldn't do this without the social mycelium that is just constantly growing, and it's really important that we continue to grow that together. Questions, okay, and as we get into questions, Nima is thanking you. Nima the nematode is thanking you. We are working on a toolkit. So our goal with this regional project is to let's make sure it works. We know it's working now. We've got 7 schools that are doing it. They're doing a great job. We haven't had any issues. I do want to talk about wildlife. And we haven't had any issues with wildlife, which is really great. And that really has to do with recipe. But so the toolkit we envision will be on our website. We have a brand new website, UV Super Compost. We've got a couple of handouts here if you want them. Just talking about our project with the links to our website. Crowdfund campaign, we're about to launch a capital campaign. Now that we've got 7 schools and all the students and their parents that work at all the local businesses in our region, and especially those anchor businesses, we're going to be saying, hey, if you want to see this continue, we really need your support, because our hopes of federal funding are done. We didn't lose our grant, and as far as we know, we're in good shape. We're about to submit our first year report, so we're in good shape right now, but I think it's pretty clear that this opportunity is not going to be available again. We had hoped to apply for another round of federal funding for our next round of schools, so now we just have to get creative. If we want to bring this to more schools, we have to get creative about how we do that. But the toolkit is something that we hope to have available for all the schools outside of our region that want to do this. We want to support everybody in doing this and also not be extractive of ourselves or our current volunteers or people that are helping us, but to really share the model so that you can replicate it for your own communities, regions, schools, etc. And we don't have that up yet, but as we get things together, we'll be putting those up on our website. But we're also just willing to share everything that we have is available. Like we need each other to shift our culture in the way that we want it to be.
We have 10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, let's do it. Should I answer the wildlife question first, because that came earlier? Probably others have that. Recipe is really what that's all about. If they can't smell it, they won't come. Right now, most schools have wheelie totes full of nothing but food scraps that stink. They sit there for a week or two. Those attract bears, raccoons, skunks, and rats. Our systems, the food scraps get deposited every day with 2.5 to 3 times the volume of carbon feedstocks. And it really doesn't stink. There's very little smell. Some days you get a little bit of an ammonia smell. If you're turning the compost, you might hit some anaerobic pockets where you get a little smell come out. But that's why we don't have wildlife issues. At Thetford Elementary, where we've been doing this for 11 years, they don't even have a system as good as this one. We have never had an issue. We've had rats once, and that inspired us to put on hardware cloth, and we haven't had a situation since then. We've had mice. We get mice in the wintertime, usually in bins 2 or 3 because it's warm. They're not in the hot bin. It's too hot. They die. They might go to the outer sides into where it's not quite as hot. But so it's not been an issue. We've had more mice issues at schools that have chickens or goats because of the feed than we do for compost. So we really haven't had any issues at all, and we're always on the lookout for it. Snakes, we haven't, but so one of the designs of our system, we've got a 3-bin system, and underneath this, the whole system is lifted off the ground about this high. So it's on a 4x4, and then there is a hardware cloth layer and then a false floor. So there's air underneath the bin. We got that idea from folks like James McSweeney, who's right next door teaching, and was a part of the Center for Highfields Compost Institute many years ago. They started bringing this to schools. We got the design from them, understanding that rodents really like ground contact with wood that they want to chew on. So by putting it up off the ground, rats will come under there, and I suspect snakes like it under there too, but I haven't seen any. I've been seeing a lot of snakes lately in my garden and other places. They're coming alive. Yeah, right. But our bins are designed so that nobody can get in there. They're all lined up. I mean, flies can fly in little holes, but we really try to make sure that they're not anaerobic, which is what flies like. But they still find it.
Were you going to talk about snake worms?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm not worried about snake worms in our compost. Our feedstocks aren't bringing them in. The food scraps aren't bringing them in. We're getting really high temperatures. Research has shown us that the cocoons for snake worms can be destroyed at 105 degrees at the right amount of time. They're the size of a poppy seed. So you never know if that poppy seed size got to the high temperature within a compost. So I just have to say that out loud. But I've never seen them come out of our living composting system. However, some of our schools have snake worms on the ground in their gardens. So I often get the question, what do you do with the compost? Well, it all goes back to the school garden. But we're producing more compost than the school garden needs. Composting 20,000 pounds of food waste a year is producing something like 12 or 13 yards of compost a year, which is more than they need for a school garden. So in the future, I hope to also be doing some trainings on how to use compost in the schoolyard and other places, and not just your school garden. But once you put that compost on the ground, you can't share it because that becomes the buffet, where all the snake worms on the property are going to run to the compost because they love to eat organic matter. There's also the timing consideration where we're using compost in our gardens in May. Jumping worms aren't really visible. We can't identify them yet in May. They're still too small. They're in their juvenile state. So they have a year-round life cycle. They'll only last for a year. They can't really survive our winters as adults. But so they're coming from the cocoon stage in the spring. You're not able to see them yet, which is, I think, part of how they're getting transferred so rapidly because we buy compost in mass and it looks so beautiful, and then all of a sudden in July we're like, whoa, who's that? Because the worms got really big. So it's on our mind to not advance the advancement of snake worms. Personally, I think in 20 years we're all just going to have them, and they're just going to be a part of our environment because we can't seem to control them.
Well, two things. One, I think your Nina is great, but it's actually really a jumping worm because he's got a cape. But the other thing is, thinking of ways to raise funds, the schools have bake sales. Can't you take some of your finished compost and develop some sales of containers of finished compost for the parents and for others?
So I do hope to get there. However, if a school has jumping worms, I think the answer is no, because we don't want to be promoting that. And I want to see that happen, but I want it to happen organically. Like I want the students to recognize, wow, we could sell this, and then get it tested, and then do quality control and screen it and bag it and market it to raise money. That would be great. But I don't want to push that on them. I want that to come from the school community, and it's come up at schools, and I'm like, great, let's improve our process. Let's make a product that's worth selling.
And going one step further is taking that finished compost, putting it in a black garbage bag, and solar heating it for a couple of days to kill off any of the worms.
The interesting thing about that is that then it also kills off all the wonderful diversity that you work to cultivate.
Yeah. So there are some hurdles there, but it's like the idea is it's not done. But yeah, it is tricky. I heard that word come up, and trying to figure out the best way to do that. And really, like for the jumping worms, keeping them out of our forests is really critical. So we also take precautions to make sure that we're not piling up the compost on the forest edge, that sort of thing. So there are a lot of pieces to balance there. We're doing our best to do that, and we welcome, input on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so alternate uses for the compost on site could be for stormwater mitigation, and athletic field management, or shrubbery or fertilization of trees. I mean, I know there's sensitivity still to the jumping worms, but that's also a learning opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah.
What is happening on the property with the soil, and what does that soil need, and what's happening with water?
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that idea, and it's a place we want to go. And Sharon, where Abby helps me a lot at Sharon Elementary, is a place where they've got fruit and nut trees that could use it on their school grounds. And one of the gaps I've identified is that a lot of facilities maintenance directors and landscapers really don't know how to use compost. I had one, and the thing that made me realize this is one of our facilities directors at a school. I was like, you could use this on the lawn. He's like, oh yeah, I could fill holes with it. And I was like, well, you could, but there are better uses. And I was like, okay, that's something in the future that there's an opportunity here to educate our communities about all of the ways that we can help to restore the ecological mycelium literally holding our landscapes together. Yeah.
I've never heard of snake worms. Is that the same as the jumping worm?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just bigger.
It's same thing, just different name. Snake worm, jumping worm, and if I could remember their Latin name, maybe someone here could. Amber something. Yeah, I can't. I'm terrible with Latin. It's all a jumble, but same.
A few more questions.
Okay.
About 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So you started, the first cohort started in 2023, so you're coming up on that end of the 2-year technical support.
Yeah.
I guess then how, working with schools, I understand it's hard to guarantee the sustainability of a program because people do retire or move on, or even if you have 4 people at school that are invested, like you said, that 3 of them left at one point, and you're left with 1, and you had to, but how, I guess how do you continue that sustainability of like all of that work and effort that went into building that system. And now that 2 years of support is going to be out, you know, you're not going to have that, they're not going to have that support. How do you, I guess, guarantee?
We can't. Yeah, it's a lot of hope and please, right? Okay. And also just staying aware for like what's next. And this is part of, I think, what's feeding into this like workforce development. Like how can we make sure that schools and condo complexes and farms and other, you know, places that want to, how can we make sure that they're supported into the future and not just extracting from volunteers to make that happen, but actually make composting a valued service in our community that people are willing to pay for, and recognizing all of the benefits. So I don't have an answer other than I hope. Thankfully, our first school that's looking to graduate this year from our program is also my hometown, where I've been volunteering for many years. And they have been really graceful in being our testing ground for so many things. So they're our first test for that as well. And the second is Thetford Elementary, where I've been for all those years. I'm leaving that position at the end of this year. They'll enroll in Super Compost, but I'm like, you never know. When you do something for a long time, what's going to happen in the next iteration? So really just trying to stay tuned and connected. It's a great question, though.
Yeah, I was going to just say a couple more things about her approach that she hasn't talked about explicitly. One is it's a very non-proprietary approach. She's not going in and saying, like, to each school, here's how to do this, here's what to do with your compost, here's how to do the system. She's letting the schools and the school communities own it from the start, which means that when we leave, a lot more of that ownership is intact. And some of that is through strategies like the community practice development. But the other thing I think with the school communities themselves, Kat's been working on really carefully, is to embed everything that we're doing in the culture of the school and in the school's knowledge transfer system, so that when there is that inevitable turnover, which is endemic in schools today, that something about how this works and why it's important kind of persists despite that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your work too. Awesome.
Yeah. I was wondering how you kind of start out with building a relationship, like how you reach out to schools and enter schools, and even if you go in and do one presentation, how you kind of build the relationship to get to the point of how.
Yeah, it is a great question. So when I started this project in 2022 is when I sort of hatched the idea of the Super Compost project. And it was called Super Compost because the first thing I did was reach out to 5 superintendents. And so in my mind, it was the Super Compost project. And I was like, should we really call it that? And then we were like, oh yeah, call it that. So then it became Super Compost. So I have been a compost consultant for schools in our region for 10 or 15 years and just figured out along the way like why schools fail. They would hire me for like 1 or 2 sessions and then they would fail because they didn't have that ongoing support. So through those years, I was able to identify what I saw as the barriers, like why isn't this happening at schools? And there are a lot of them, and we have a FAQ sheet on that. I think it's on our website that we're happy to share with you. And it's everything from like, I don't know how to do it, the school turnover, it's going to cause rats, what about the bears, all of these things, all the fears, money, all of these things. So I went to the superintendents and I said, listen, a lot of your schools have asked for composting over the years. I've got this idea. What do you think? And I couldn't believe that in June, 5 superintendents got back to me within 3 days of me sending that email. They were like, yeah, great idea. So I went from like a little top, that was part of it too, was like grassroots is awesome and we need so much of that, but we also needed a little top down. So I went to the superintendents and they were like, great, we'll create the conditions for you to be able to present to all of our principals. And then I presented to the principals and the superintendents were like, if you want in on this, you got to connect with Kat. So they weren't facilitating it. They just created the opportunity for me to present to principals. Principals then opted in or out. At that point, I had a list of 24 schools that were interested. Some of those have dropped off. others have popped in. And now I'm like a little nervous we're going to get too many schools. But we're just kind of riding it as we go. So it's a little bit different at every school. The first school I worked with, it was a school nurse under the guise of wellness and wholeness in a school. Other schools, it's been like a lead teacher, which is awesome, and also use caution because lead teachers that are on fire, they tend to burn out. So support them, but you need more than that, right? Like they're amazing and we couldn't do this without them. And sometimes it's a maintenance guy, like the one at Newberry was their maintenance guy was like, yeah, we could really use a little support in how to do this. Sometimes it's the school principal. Other school principals want nothing to do with it. They're like, if they want to do it, go ahead. But I think it's gross, you know? Yeah.
You just really exemplify design thinking and systems thinking, you know?
Thanks.
And so it's just like, and tailored to, you know? So taking whatever situation you're in and just being wide open in all of your thinking, how to make connections and continue them.
Nature is my greatest teacher. That's all I can say to that.
And with that, we would like to thank everyone for attending this awesome session and our presenters.